Okay, welcome to the video. C.O.R.E here. In this video, I'm just going to show you how to put a couple upgrades in the a P320. Basically, I got this AXG Legion the other day, so I wanted to do a couple upgrades on it. And one of the videos I've been wanting to do for a while is the SIG Armor action tuning kits. Basically, you used to have to send your firearm to the SIG Armor, and you can do the gunsmithing on it and then send it back to you. You could get a carry level action job, a competition level action job. Well, now he's made some kits where the gunsmithing is done to the parts already. So you basically just buy the kit, put it in yourself, and it's the same as sending it out to him and having him do it, except you're not without your firearm for a few days. So there are several different kits to choose from. There's the competition level kit with cradle trigger. There's the carry level kit with a cradle trigger. Okay, and then there's the core kit. Now the core kit is the same as these kits, except there's no trigger shoe. Okay, so for those of you that want to use your existing trigger, or you have your favorite trigger and you want to keep that trigger in it, then the core kit is what you're going to need. Me, I'm going to be using the Armory Craft slightly curved dual adjustable trigger, and then I'm going to also put their Type 2 Sport takedown lever in it. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to install the Wilson Combat Extended Slide Release slide catch. Okay, so with that, let's get started. So before we get started, the first thing I want to do is actually take some readings with the Wheeler trigger pull gauge here. Kind of get a baseline for what the stock trigger is. Nothing in it has been changed yet. And also, before we get started, if you like these types of videos, please subscribe to the channel. There should be a subscribe button right down here in the corner. If you could smash that baby, I'd really appreciate it. That way our content gets distributed more as well. So let's do a 5-pull average on this. First, we're going to remove our magazine and make sure we're working on a clear and safe firearm, as we're going to be pulling the trigger. So we're going to lock our slide to the rear, check our chamber, check the magazine, breech face, look away, do the same thing again, chamber, magazine, breech face. We are working on a clear and safe firearm. Okay, so just to go over a couple things regarding the trigger pull. Testing. Basically, I like to actually exercise the trigger and the slide a little bit before doing it, because it seems like whenever I do it, the very first readings are higher than the ending readings, okay? And I don't know if it's because the grease is, or the oil is colder or whatever, but it just seems to be like if you kind of exercise it like this, you know, a few times, it's more consistent from beginning to end, okay? So we'll do that. And then when we're doing our trigger pull, we want to basically put our gauge right in the center of the trigger. We want to pull perpendicular to the trigger. Okay, so like a T. We don't want to be like this. We don't want to be like that. We want to be perfectly like this, pulling it back. And then we want to pull it back slowly. We don't want to snap it, because like we don't have a 1 pound, 9.2 ounce trigger. Okay, that's what happens when you snap it. It does not give you an accurate reading. And then you don't want to put it on the very bottom of the trigger, because mechanical advantage is going to give you a real low reading as well. Although if you have your finger down there, that's going to be realistic trigger pull weight. But to accurately test a trigger, really want to put it in the center and pull back slowly, perpendicular, to get an accurate reading. So we got 5 pounds, 7.3. We'll do 5 pulls here. 5 pounds, 9.5. 5 pounds, 11.15. 5 pounds, 9.5. One more. 5 pounds, 3.9. So We'll enter that. Our average is 5 pounds, 8.3 ounces, 5 pulls. Okay, and then I'll write that down, and then we'll do this again when we're all finished to see how much of a difference the C.O.R.E kit's going to make in the AXG Legion. So now that we have our trigger pull readings gathered and we got them written down, let's do a basic field strip so we can start installing our C.O.R.E kit. So we're going to lock our slide to the rear. We're going to rotate our takedown lever. We're going to release our slide, and then we'll remove our takedown lever. Rotate that and pull that straight out. And then we'll remove our FCU from our frame. So this is another handy tool from the SIG Armor. It's called the accessibility tool, or the access tool now. This is the old school one. This is one of the first ones you even made for the 320. The new version that's available now is version 2, and it's for the 365 and the 320. Okay, 365, 320 access tool. And this thing does a lot more than what I just done here. So a lot of mine, and especially brand new firearms, the FCU comes out super hard. A lot of my grips are Cerakoted, so them FCUs are jammed in there pretty tight, and you almost rip your fingernails off trying to pull those out of the grip. So this definitely makes that step a lot easier. This will help you get your guide rod and spring back in and everything, and actually disassemble and reassemble your striker assembly. So there is a video on this. If you go to the website, sigguy.com, go to the tools page. That's where you'll find these. And in the description, there's a link to the see it in action, a review video I made on this. So it'll show you everything that this does for the 320. Again, that's on sigguy.com. So now that we have all that taken care of and everything, let's get this FCU disassembled so we can install the C.O.R.E kit. Let's take a quick look at what comes in the kit. And for those of you that are going to ask which springs are which, if you open up the packaging on the back side of the front card there, gives you the contents of each kit. Okay, so in this one here we have our competition level striker. Okay, so we'll be installing that. One hardened sear, we'll be installing that as well. The chrome disconnector, we'll be installing that. And then we have 3 different sear springs. Okay, we have a -10, which is in the yellow packaging, minus 10%, minus 25% in the pink, minus 50 in the orange. And then our trigger bar springs, we have a plus 10% trigger bar spring. It comes with 2 of them. Now, the plus 10, if you're going to use those are the people that want a more tactile, more positive reset in their 320 instead of like a kind of a mushy, lazy reset. So that will increase the trigger pull weight just a little bit, but the benefits outweigh, you know, that marginal increase. Okay. Then we have a minus 20% trigger bar spring, so that's going to decrease our trigger pull weight. And for the purposes of this video, to show you the contrast between OEM and how low the kit will get this 320, I'm going to install the lighter springs, so the minus 10 sear springs, and then the minus 20 trigger bar spring. Okay, so it depends on what the purpose of the firearm you're going to be installing this in, it, whether it's an EDC or it's a recreational firearm, competition, home defense. Take that stuff into consideration when choosing which springs you want to install in the kit. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to use the lightest possible in this one so we can see what the difference between the trigger pull weight versus OEM is. Okay, so again, take a look at the card, and this picture is on the website as well, so it shows you what's in the kit on sigguy.com. So let's get our FCU disassembled so we can start installing these components. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. I'm not going to go slowly, step by step, every single process here, as I have tons of disassembly videos already on my YouTube. So if you need something a little slower paced, step by step, because this is going too fast for you or whatnot, just refer to one of those other videos. Okay, so first we're going to remove our trigger bar, and our trigger bar spring. And I do not remove our spring first because it ruins the spring a lot of times. So the easiest way to do this is basically grab our trigger bar, pull it up, out, and swing it around the back side of our sear housing just like that. Okay, and that'll put our trigger basically in the forwardmost position. You can see it's already fallen out, and that allows us to slide that up and out. Okay, so we'll set that aside over here, and then we're going to grab our trigger bar. We're going to pull that, swing it up, out, and around away from our slide catch. Let's get it. So sometimes it gets stuck in between the sear housing and the frame itself, this part here. So just kind of pull it up and you can get that right out. So we're going to remove our trigger bar. Then you can see our spring is like the last thing to come out, and we have not deformed this spring or damaged it in any way. It's perfectly fine to reuse this, and we can remove it and install it hundreds of times that way, and it'll always be fine when we go to reassemble. So we're going to be changing out the springs, so make sure you keep track of your springs. You don't want to accidentally reinstall the same one and get a result that you weren't expecting because you didn't install a lighter or a heavier spring. Okay, so we're going to set that over here so we don't reinstall it by accident. We're going to reuse our trigger bar, and we'll put our trigger over here because we're not going to reuse that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to remove my slide catch, because I'm going to be, you don't have to remove yours, but I'm going to be replacing mine, so we're going to remove the pin for that. And then we're going to tip that upside down. We're going to be reusing our spring and that little rubber puck there, or bushing, or whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to set our slide catch aside over here. Okay, before we can disassemble anything back here, first we need to get our takedown safety lever out of the way, and the trigger stop pin here in the front. For whatever reason, these are always a pain in the butt. Once they get worn and they slide in and out pretty easily, then they're super easy. But right from the manufacturer, I don't know what they do, if this end here is flared a little bit and then it's kind of pressed in or whatnot, but it's always a pain in the ass to get these things in and out. So if you have one of my tool kits, this is the deluxe kit. It's got the small, medium, and large pin alignment tools. The small one is made for that hole, for this to go through there. So once this is moving fairly freely, you can just push it out with this punch. But from the factory, brand new, I wouldn't recommend using this with a hammer. Get the appropriate size punch. Put this on an armor's block, and then we'll hammer that trigger stop pin out. Okay, it doesn't have to come all the way out. A lot of times, see how it's like I don't know if it's from the punch, just doing it right now, or what, but on half of my FCUs, this just doesn't. I can pound it out all the way, obviously, but without hitting it very hard, it doesn't come out. It stops right there. On some of my other ones, it does fall all the way out. Okay, so just if it's right there like that, that's fine. You ain't got to pull it all the way out. Okay, and then when we go to put this back in, you got to make sure it is completely lined up with that hole, because it doesn't want to go naturally straight towards that hole for whatever reason. So, I mean, you can see right there, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's off center. Okay, so you got to kind of, and what happens is people try to hammer it in when it's not centered, and they completely ruin the end over here. At that point, you got to basically take the whole thing out, file it so it's not mushroomed anymore, and then you can get it to go back through the hole. Okay, or this is the proper number, trigger stop pin 1300827-R. These are on the website as well. I have all the factory parts for most SIGs on the website. So if you need OEM factory pins, springs, whatever, that's all on the website. So I'm just noticing that because a lot of people seem to have a problem with that pin particularly. Okay, so once we have that out of the way to where that captures, doesn't really capture, but it prevents our takedown safety lever from coming out because it goes through it. Okay, so we got to move that out of the way to get our takedown safety lever out of the way. So to get our takedown safety lever out, what we're going to do is we're going to push down. Here it just kind of click as we push towards the other side. Just like that. Okay, so it's kind of in there diagonal now. And what that's going to do is allow us to use a pick. And the spring here that's in behind it, I'm basically just going to put my pick as far forward on that spring as I can to pull the spring back. And that's going to kind of relieve the tension from the spring on our takedown safety lever here. And I can pull my takedown safety lever out of that hole. There's a leg that comes off of it that goes into that notch that the spring pushes up against. You'll understand better here when I pull it out. So I'm going to grab my spring, pull it forward, and then pull my takedown safety lever up and out of there. Okay, so that's that little leg I was referring to. The spring is actually pushing on that. So we pull the spring back to get it off of the leg, and we can pull that out. Okay, so that's our takedown safety lever. Obviously, we'll be reusing that. We'll And then now we can disassemble our sear and safety lever and stuff. So next we will remove our safety lever pivot pin and our sear pivot pin. Those go from right to left, okay? Even though this looks like the pin would come out towards this side because of the head of it there, it actually goes out the other way, okay? So again, if you got the any of my tool kits, I sell these on sigguy.com. This is the deluxe kit. I have a 365 kit, a 320 kit, a 22X kit, which is for your classic SIGs, or I have the deluxe kit, which has one of everything in all three of those kits combined into one kit. So if you have multiple SIGs, you don't need to buy multiple kits, okay? Save you guys some money. So we're going to use the medium and the large. The large one is for our safety lever pivot pin right here. So we'll just push that right out. See how that fits perfectly. And these act kind of like slave pins. That's the genius thing behind these tools is a lot of pistols, you don't have to completely disassemble a bunch of stuff. If you're changing one part, you can use these as slave pins, knock out the pin, change whatever part, put the pin back in, and then you don't have to disassemble everything. So it saves you a lot of time. So there's our safety lever pivot pin. We'll just remove that. And then we'll take this and we'll remove our sear pivot pin. Same principle with that one there, with that slave pin. We're going to remove that. And then we're just going to tip it upside down and let all this stuff fall right out of there. Okay. That's right there. Okay. So we have our sear, 2 sear springs, and our safety lever. Okay. That's what will all come out when you remove those 2 pins. Next, we'll remove our disconnector. In order to remove that, we have to remove our sear housing, which basically pivots on this one roll pin here. This is the hardest pin to get out of the 320 FCU, and I do have replacement pins as well on sigguy.com. This would be the 1301341-R pin coiled spring, 2.5 millimeter times 20 millimeter. Okay, so it's always a good idea to have a couple of any of these parts on hand if you're frequently taking apart and reassembling your SIGs, whether it's for cleaning or upgrading or whatever the case may be. That way you got some nice fresh parts, you can put it back in there. So this one here just kind of brute force gets it out. So we'll use this punch that I'm using is a 3/32. Okay, I use that on the trigger stop pin, and I'm going to use that here on the sear housing pin as well. So this can go out either way, left or right, does not matter. And like I said, you just kind of brute force is going to pound this out of there. And always pay attention to like the position of this stuff before you start pounding on it. A little bit sticks out this side, a little bit sticks out that side. It's basically in there centered, not one side's flush or the other, okay? So, again, we'll keep hammering this. So we knock our pin out. So that's our pin right there. Anytime you remove roll pins, okay, this is a roll pin, SIG recommends that you replace it with a brand new pin, okay? This thing's brand new, hasn't even been shot yet, so I'm not going to replace it, but if it doesn't hurt either to take a little file, whatever end you're pounding on, to kind of 45-degree angle or whatever, kind of file that a little bit so that way it's not mushroomed from your punch. That'll help it go in, or you can just put it in the other end in first, okay, leave that part hanging out. Either way, it's fine. So now we're going to pull our sear housing up and out of here, just like that. Now there's absolutely nothing left in our chassis, and our disconnector is just kind of floating there on the side. And it doesn't even look like SIG put any grease in there. Little dot of oil, that's about it. Maybe they don't recommend greases in there because this needs to float freely or something, but I've seen them with grease and I've seen them without grease, so I'm not sure what the answer is on that one. But anyway, so there's our sear housing. If you booger this up, I have this on the website as well. I don't think I have disconnect. I might have disconnectors. I have to double check. Everything's very labeled on the website. So when you go to the website, up top in the drop-down menu, SIG factory parts or whatever it says, you click on that and the sub-menu comes down to 365, 320, classics. There's like 4 or 5 different sub-menus there. Anyway, you click on whatever one's appropriate, so 320, and then it goes to that page. And I have the diagrams from the small part shopper at the top. Everything's numbered. Okay, so like this pin here is numbered, and then that way you don't accidentally, it's numbered in the exploded diagram up top, and then the pictures for the products down bottom have the corresponding numbers, so that way you don't order the wrong pin or wrong part by accident. Okay, so anyway, all this stuff is pretty much on the website. If these ain't on there, I'll get these on there. So if you want a factory disconnector for whatever reason, you lose yours or whatnot, you can buy a replacement. The only thing I don't have is just the chassis by themselves. I do sell the whole complete FCUs, but, and here's another thing on the FCUs. People always ask when I'm getting them back in stock. You're at the mercy of SIG, okay? Whenever they ship them is when you get them. They're on order. Sometimes it could be a year before they ship them. Sometimes it's next day. There's really no rhyme or reason. Sometimes when they come out with a new pistol, like the Macro, a lot of the 365 stuff was very hard to get because they're mass producing these pistols. They need the parts themselves. So I have always 10 320s on order and 10 365s on order. So whenever I'm out, I'm out. And I have no control of whether, you know, I can get them quicker or not for you guys. Because that's the number one question I always get is when the FCUs will be back in stock. And that's just the reality of it. You're at the mercy of SIG. And that's with all parts, okay? Sometimes like the mag catches and stuff like that. I usually try to order like hundreds of them at a time so I never run out. But unfortunately, every now and then they're backlogged or in short supply or whatever the case may be. And it's just a matter, it's a waiting time. And I have no idea. They give me an estimated ship time, but that does not always mean they're going to ship during that time. Anyway, so now that we have all this taken apart, now is a perfect time to clean this thing from top to bottom, from head to toe, and get all that carbon out of there. I'll get it all nice and cleaned up. You don't really need to lube anything on here. Just get it nice and bone dry and spick and span. Same thing with your sear housing and all these other parts that you're going to reuse. And then we can lube them up as we install them. So now that we have everything all cleaned up, first thing we're going to do is reinstall our disconnector with our sear housing and our new disconnector that is chrome. So we'll install that into the side just like that. I'm not going to lube it up because it wasn't lubed up when I took it apart. I'm going to slide it back down into our chassis. And then we're going to line up our holes here in the back. Okay. So our 2.5 by 20 millimeter pin, I'm going to put in the side that I didn't use my punch on first. And then we're just going to drive this baby home, paying attention to where our sear housing is to make sure it's not moving around. Make sure you got your disconnector in there, okay? So you don't have to take this all back apart again. So I'm looking through the other side to make sure we're still lined up, which we are. And then we're going to hit it till it's just about even on both sides. Kind of looks like this side's out a little bit more. So we're centered in there. Make sure this kind of still free floating. It's not jammed in there and you got it installed incorrectly or whatnot. And then make sure our disconnector goes up and down as well. Next, we'll install our safety lever. So this guy right here. This hooked portion up top faces the front. This is the rear. This is the top. This is the bottom. Okay. And it goes on the right side. This is the front of my pistol. It goes in the sear housing on the right side towards me. Okay. So I'm basically going to rotate this around, slide that down inside just like that. As I'm looking through the hole, make sure everything's lined up. Take my alignment pin, put it through there. You can see my safety lever is pivoting now on my alignment tool. Okay. So then we'll take our safety lever pivot pin, push out our slave pin. Just like that. And then next we'll install the new C.O.R.E with the new C.O.R.E springs. Next we'll be installing our new C.O.R.E with C.O.R.E springs. These are the -10 C.O.R.E springs. And a good idea before installing anything, especially if it's an aftermarket part, is to check your fitment, okay? So what I mean by that is take your C.O.R.E pivot pin and make sure it fits through the pivot hole freely, okay? These have been hardened, so it might be the inside diameter of that hole has some crud in it from the hardening process or whatever the case may be, or you might have to take like a little round file or something, kind of like this, and just lightly clean up that hole so that way our pivot pin slides freely through it, okay? When you get this all inside there and you try to get your pin through and it won't go through, it's probably because the fitment is pretty tight in there, okay? So it's always best to check that stuff before you put it back together. That way you don't have a hard time. Make sure a pin goes through there nice and easily. We didn't like mushroom it or anything, okay? So that all fits fine. So we're going to take our C.O.R.E springs, and you can take a dab of grease and put them on these little posts here. I use Tetra grease. I use Tetra grease on everything. I don't use oil so much in my firearms anymore. The grease stays put for a lot longer, and the heat range is a lot greater usually with grease. So this is on the website as well. I got all kinds of cleaning supplies and stuff on there. That's under the tools and cleaning section. So we're going to take our springs, we're going to push them on those posts just like that. There's one. There's two. Sometimes you got to twist the spring in order to get it go on that post. Just like that. We want to make sure our springs are not crossed, okay? Because when we put it into our housing here, you can see our housing has these two channels. One on this side, one on this side. That's where our springs go down with kind of a little divider in the center. So you got to make sure your springs aren't crossed at all, okay? So we're going to take our C.O.R.E springs towards the rear. We're going to put them right down into those channels. I'm going to push it right down into the C.O.R.E housing just like that. And you have to kind of pull it back and push it down to get our hole to line up. So I'm looking through the side here, looking through the hole. I'm going to take my pin alignment tool. Get that started in there. And see if I can get it through the center of my C.O.R.E hole. Just like that. Through the other side. So our C.O.R.E is all in the proper position. We can actually do a function check and make sure it rebounds correctly, which it does. And now we can take our C.O.R.E pivot pin here, again from left to right. Pull this out a little bit so we can get our C.O.R.E pivot pin started. Just like that. And then push it all the way through. Just like that. So this needs to be flush here, because don't forget our takedown safety lever bar has to kind of go on this side here. So that needs to be all the way in so it doesn't interfere. And it's sticking out on this side. Our safety lever pivot pin's basically back the opposite. This end is sticking out over here and is flush on this side. Okay. Function check again. We're good to go. Now we'll install our takedown safety lever. Okay, so next we're going to install our takedown safety lever, but what I like to do on mine is I like to have this trigger stop pin come out. Okay, I like to make sure it's not deformed in any way, because these are a pain in the butt to get back in. At least it is for me. I'm not sure if everybody else has a problem, but I like to basically take them out. I like to take a file, and I like to, you know, kind of do like this and clean up that edge to make it kind of like chamfered. That way it goes in them holes properly or easily, okay? So with any of these pins, if they're too loose, that's not an issue, okay? Because your grip module, your frame, actually sandwiches everything on the sides here, and that's what keeps your pins from falling out. So a lot of times the takedown safety lever here, or excuse me, the safety lever pivot pin, a lot of times that just falls out. I mean, you stick this thing on its side and it falls out. It's such a loose fit. And people always ask if that's an issue or not. It's not an issue, because once your pistol's put all back together, the FCU is capturing all those pins and keeping them to where they need to be. So I like to make sure that this thing, both sides, it goes in and out, no problem. Okay, that makes installation a lot easier, saves you a lot of headache in the end. Okay, maybe you got to take a little round file and clean up your hole here. Okay, both sides. That's what I just did because I like to have this come out so I'm not fiddling with it while I'm trying to disassemble all this other stuff, and it keeps going in and out, in and out, in and out the whole time. So anyway, we're going to take our takedown safety lever. This leg here needs to go into the notch here. The little notch has the spring in it. The springs are available on the website if you booger this one up somehow. Okay. And when we had our whole C.O.R.E housing out, that's when you would change that spring. It just sits right in the side there. I forgot to show you guys that. But that's the way you change that spring. You got to knock out your roll pin, take your C.O.R.E housing out, and then your spring is just kind of laying in the side there in the house of the C.O.R.E housing. Okay. So we're gonna grab our pick. We're gonna position our takedown safety lever here on the side, and then we're gonna take our pick and grab as far forward on that spring as we can. We're gonna pull it back to open up that opening so we can stick the leg of our takedown safety lever down in there, and then the spring will push back up onto the leg. Okay. So we're gonna put this in here diagonally, just like it came out. And this takedown safety lever bar, I don't know if this notch here is a little bit different than my other 320s, but this one here it's pretty tough getting it put back together. So yours might go easier than mine. So I'm going to grab that spring. I'm going to push that lever down in there. And it's almost all the way flat. It's not flat because we're diagonal still. It's somewhat diagonal. So all you do is you push this all the way to the side and then up. Okay? Because it's got to get, this front portion here has to get around this corner and up into that notch. Okay? So pull it with my fingers. I was basically pulling it as hard as I could, smushing it against the side of this while pulling up so it can get into that little notch like we just discussed. Okay. Now we can put our trigger stop pin in, and this goes from left to right as well. We can't have anything sticking out on this side because that's where our trigger and trigger bar go. So the head of this is going to be sticking out on the left side. Okay. And you can see our trigger bar, our takedown safety lever, it wants to push that pin out of alignment through that other hole. And that's what causes a lot of problems with somebody, why they can't get it lined up. But where I have mine fitted to where it's nice and free, I mean, I can almost push that all the way in. I actually did push it all the way in without using a hammer or anything. Okay. If yours is tight, basically just get it so it's lined up. Use like the Delrin end of your armor's hammer. Give that a couple taps and it should go right in there. Okay. If it's not going in there, it's because, like I said, your takedown safety lever, the hole that it goes through, you can see how that pin is riding right up against the takedown safety lever. Okay, that safety lever is pushing the pin forward so it misaligns it for the two holes. So basically maybe you have to pull this back a little bit while you line up your pin and then put it through. Okay. So once we get that all together and everything, we do want to do a function check. We want to make sure that that spring is rebounding that by itself. Okay, so I've changed my mind. I'm going to use the factory trigger that way when I get it all reassembled and I do the trigger pull test for the weight, it's an accurate comparison with the kit, okay? Because depending on which trigger shoe you have in there, that can reduce the trigger pull weight as well. And then at the very end, I will put this in there and we'll do it again so you can see what the overall change is going to be, okay? And while I'm on that same thought, when we do install any triggers, we want to make sure they fit properly first on the 320, okay? Because I get this all the time through emails and stuff. So the post on your trigger here goes through the hole on your trigger bar, okay? So we're going to put that together like that. We're going to hold it with our finger. And then we're just going to loosely grip it and then just make sure our trigger bar, it goes freely, okay? Because a lot of times what happens is somebody puts the trigger in their 320, they put it all back together. Now their trigger won't reset because it's bound up somewhere and they don't know where, okay? And there's several different places. So basically we're eliminating the possibility that our trigger bar and our trigger bar pin on our trigger is the problem if that does happen. Now, if this is a tight fit here, basically you can put some grease on the post here, put your trigger bar on there, and then just keep working it. Okay, in your hands just like this outside the pistol. Just keep doing that until it frees up to where it flops back and forth nice and freely. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that before I forgot it. So we're going to take our trigger bar spring. This is the -10. We're going to install it through our trigger bar just like that. And then we're going to take this, put it through the back side of our FCU just like that. And then we're going to rotate our trigger bar up and around just like that. Okay, so it's behind our sear housing. It's laying flat here. If you're going to grease this stuff up, you want grease on this pivot point here, on the inside pivot point there, on the post there where it goes to the trigger bar. Some people like to put it on the side of the FCU here where your trigger bar might rub up against it. And if you have an older trigger bar that curves up, put a little bit back here, okay? So now you can slide your, and before we get to that point, again, when we're talking about an aftermarket trigger, you're going to want to make sure that when you put it in here, before hooking anything up, that it pivots nice and freely, okay? Because this post here could be slightly bigger, this area in here could be slightly bigger, and that could be causing some binding issues, okay? Which causes it not to reset by itself. So you want to kind of eliminate all this stuff before putting it together. That way, if you have issues, you know what it's not. So you can actually put this in through this side here. Make sure that pivots nice and freely in that hole, which is plenty fine. Okay. So we're going to put our factory trigger back in. We know it's going to fit properly because it came out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our trigger bar. We're going to grab it here. We're going to fish that hole over to the pin on the trigger until it slides over that. Just like that. Okay, I'm kind of squeezing my trigger against the side of my FCU, and it's pinching that trigger bar in there. And I'm just going to use my finger, push back on my trigger while I guide my trigger bar back around inside the sear housing there. And it's flush. Okay, do a little, that's the pin that falls out. We talked about that. You can see it's a very loose fit. And I can even put that back in there. I thought I was going to be able to put it back in there with no help. See, it's good, this stuff. I'm not even gonna edit that out. I'm gonna leave it right in there. That way, if it happens to you, come on. Use my alignment tool there, line that back up. Again, your FCU is going to hold this pin in there when it's inside the grip module. There. So just be wary of something like that. You got to kind of hold it with your finger if you're going to put it on its side there, okay? Anyway, we'll do a function check. Make sure it resets by itself, which it does. Everything's working properly there. Next, I'm going to install my Wilson Combat extended slide release. Okay, got a little bit more real estate here. They extend out, so you got a little bit more real estate for your thumb. Makes releasing your slide a lot easier. So we're going to use our spring and bushing, or yeah, I guess they call it a bushing maybe. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on there, and what that'll do is make that stick to your slide catch, slide release. So that way when we install it, it doesn't fall. I'm going to line up my holes here. You can lube this pin up a little bit, put a little lube on there. And then we'll put that right through there, just like that. Little function check, make sure it rebounds by itself from the spring. Everything's working properly. And there you go. The FCU is completely put back together, so we're just going to reinstall that into our grip module. And then we're going to install our Armory Craft Type 2 Sport Takedown Lever. We're going to put some grease on our O-ring here. That way we won't damage the O-ring when we put it back in, and it works a little bit freer. I'm going to twist that, get that in there. And then we'll work that back and forth a couple times. And there you go. So now that all that we have left is we're going to install our striker assembly into the upper, and then we'll be done installing the core kit. So for our striker assembly, we basically got to remove our back plate to get the striker out. So I'm going to remove my guide rod. I'll remove my barrel. And then we're just going to push in on this detent here. This is for our extractor. Basically push that in. That'll allow us to slide the back plate down. Take that right out of there. Now we can remove our striker assembly. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove the retainer here and the spring and the housing and put our new striker inside here. So when we were talking earlier about the armor's block here from the SIG Armor, it's got a cavity here that holds your striker, okay? So it kind of acts like a third hand. You basically put your striker in there, put it down on your bench. You can compress the spring, remove the cups, and it's very helpful. So if you're interested in these, again, check out the website. In the product description, there's a video that shows this procedure in there, so you can better understand how to use it. So a couple of things with our striker. There's different variations out there, different parts, but the main thing we want to pay attention to is this little safety portion here, okay? This is what basically keeps your safety from, or your striker from hitting the primer and making the gun go off if the trigger's not pulled, okay? So pay attention to the way it's in there, okay? It's almost all the way compressed. We can see the top of it through the little window here, okay? And it actually, you'll see it when I remove it, but there's a little 90-degree arm on here that rides on in this part of the striker, okay? What I mean by that is this half that's facing me, not this half over here, okay? So sometimes when you put your striker back together, you'll see that little lever is up on this half, and then you can't get it into your slide. That's because it's put together incorrectly, okay? So what we're going to do is you basically, whether you use the armor's block or your hands, you're just going to compress your striker spring just like that, so it releases this cup, and this cup is sometimes two pieces that'll fall right out, or it's got the newer design one piece like this one right here, okay? And then we'll release our spring softly. So this is the one piece cup now. If yours is two pieces, perfectly fine. I don't have these yet on the website. I'll try to get them. I do have the two-piece design on there, okay? So we're going to remove our spring here, and then what we'll do is we'll push in on our safety lever here, so that way it doesn't interfere with our striker, and we can pull our striker right out of the housing, okay? If you have an older striker, sometimes there's a smaller spring on here with 3 or 4 coils. That's fine. That's what rebounds this, and you'll see when I put it back together what I'm talking about. The newer design has this channel right here, or maybe I think the older design has a channel too. I'm not 100% sure on this. It's been a while, but the spring now interacts with this little nub here down inside that channel, and that's what kind of rebounds this a little bit when we put it all back together. I forget the old design if they had that little spring in there also, but a lot of people think they lose this spring. Well, this one doesn't even have it on there, okay? So that's how you completely disassemble the striker. Next, we'll reinstall the SIG Armor's core kit striker. So we'll put this one over here so it doesn't get mixed up, and this is the SIG Armor one. And like I said, that little, if you look down inside your striker, if you look straight through it like that, you can see over here, there's that little piece that protrudes in there, okay? That is what interacts with your striker, and that's the safety portion, okay? So we got to make sure that when we reassemble this, first of all, make sure that this works freely. Should work like that. Okay, and when you look down inside the hole there, see that piece in there? That's what interacts with the striker. So when we put this together, we need to kind of push that down. If it's up, you're going to be on the wrong side of your striker. Okay, then we're going to slide our striker in here, just like that. Then we can release that. And this is that spring I was talking about. If we push that in there, let's see if we can do this when I show you on camera. See how it springs back? There's a little spring in that channel on this side here. Some of the older strikers have another spring around the striker itself inside the housing, okay? So anyway, that's in there fine. Our notch here on our safety is in this portion of the striker, not on top of it here. And you'll also notice it's really flush with the striker if you look down on it. If it's out like this, chances are it's in the wrong position, okay? And it works freely. If yours doesn't go in and out like that, it's because you got it on the wrong side of your striker, okay? So we're going to put our spring on there. We're going to pull it, collapse our spring, pull out on our striker so we can get to this lower recessed portion on our striker. That's where the cup goes. Cup only goes one way, so the spring can go up and over it like that, and then release it. And we'll just kind of do a function check, make sure this is still working. And if this spring came out and everything, and the lever came off, look in my other disassembly videos. It shows how to put that back together, okay? But that's how you install the striker back into the striker housing. Now we'll install it in the slide and we'll finish this up. So we'll install our striker back in here like this. And if your striker, it doesn't collapse like that, the housing, then that safety portion is not put together correctly, okay? You want to make sure that pushes in like that so we can put our back plate on, and then it releases and it locks our back plate into place, okay? So we'll actually get this kind of started. We'll push that in there like that. We'll get our back plate positioned in there about halfway. Then we can push in on our extractor pin here. Slide that up in there, and that'll lock that right into place. Okay. We're going to also double check to make sure that safety lever in there is free. Okay. And that's what keeps our striker, we can't push it forward to where we see it in the hole here, where the primer would be, until you depress that, and then you can pull it forward. Now you can see it coming through there. So that's the safety portion, that it's impossible for this to fire if the trigger isn't pulled, which all them lawsuits you've all heard about them. Miraculously, these 320s went off without them pulling the trigger. Anyway, so we're going to reinstall our barrel, reinstall our guide rod. Okay, we got our takedown lever in. We're going to reinstall our slide, rotate our takedown lever, and then we'll do a trigger pull test now to get a reading to see how much of a difference the core kit made in this AXG Legion. Okay, similar as before, we'll exercise it, kind of get things all warmed up and moving freely in there. Clear our data. .5 314.9 315.4. So looks like just under 4 pounds. 5.9. That's probably kind of an anomaly there. Maybe not. 3.97. We'll do a couple more. So I'd say it's going to be 3.13 to 3.15, so just under 4 pounds. Originally we had 5 pounds, 8.3 ounces. So you can see it's a pretty significant difference in just trigger pull weight with the core kit added in there. And then you add on top of that the cradle trigger or whatever trigger you're going to use, and that'll change the readings as well. Plus it's just a more tactile, more positive experience for the trigger pull. It gets rid of a lot of that mushiness that a lot of the 320 owners have a problem with. So there you have it. I'm going to actually take this trigger out. I'm going to put the Armory Craft one in it, and then we'll take another trigger pull reading. All right, so now we have the Armory Craft slightly curved in there. We'll work that a little bit. Get things kind of warmed up. And we'll clear our data. Same as before. So 314.1. 312.5. 313. So it's going to be pretty much the same as our factory trigger. I know these reduced trigger pull weight by 20% when they first came out compared to the previous triggers, and that's pretty much what Armory Craft and all the other triggers are pretty close to that same thing as well. So again, the other one was 5 pounds, 8.3 ounces. Our factory trigger went down to 3 pounds, anywhere from 13 to 15 ounces. This one here is the same thing, 3 pounds, 13.3, just under 4 pound trigger pull weight. So big significant difference with the core kit. And then if you want the competition level action job or the carry level action job, this is similar to the competition level action job. If you don't want to trigger that light, you can put the carry level action job in there, and that'll be a little heavier of a trigger, but a lot lighter still than the factory trigger. So there you go. There you have it. That is the SIG Armor's core kit for the P320. Obviously, the only thing left to do would be to do a function check and then bring it to the range and put a couple boxes of ammo through it to make sure that it is 100% reliable. I have not adjusted my trigger up yet, so I got to lock tight the screws and do that and let it set overnight. That's the Type 2 Sport Takedown lever from Armory Craft. I really like those new ones. You can see how much more pronounced the slide catch is. It makes releasing our slides a lot easier with that extended slide catch. Actually, I have the Springer Precision AXG extended mag release I'm going to put in this as well. Comes already with the mag well on it. And then you got all your different base pads to choose from your favorite manufacturers. So probably going to put an optic on this one as well. I was going to use the brass grips from Armory Craft on this, but I really like how they have the Legion emblem in these hoe grips. So I think I'm going to probably just keep those on it because it is a Legion and I want it to remain, you're paying for this stuff, so I want to actually have it and use it. So there you have it. So if you find these types of videos useful, again, please subscribe. There should be a button right down here. And then check out sigguy.com if you haven't been there in a while. I got over 1,200 different SKUs on the website now. So from over 50 different companies, I got all kinds of upgrades. And as we've talked throughout the video, factory OEM parts as well, okay? Not to mention all the toolkits, the cleaning supplies, all kinds of stuff on there, some swag, if you're into that kind of stuff. So as always, I appreciate everybody for watching. Thank you very much, and have a great day.